When it came time for my first day of third grade, I did not want to go to school. Correction, I did not want to go to Ellsbury Elementary School. Over the summer, my family had moved to a new town with a new school and none of my old friends. I should have been walking into class with my best friend Katie that day, but instead, I was alone and miserable. How could my mom expect me to make a new best friend? Katie and I had been friends for forever. How did you make friends anyway? Before I just had them, but now all the kids were looking at me funny. Was my new haircut bad? Did my breath smell? A week before school was a rotten time to lose a tooth. At recess on the first day, I sat on the fence of the playground by myself. A few girls came over to talk to me, but I knew the teacher had told them to. By the end of the first week of school, I was still miserable. Maybe, if I was miserable enough, my parents would move us all back to our real home in New Franklin. But maybe not. If I could just make one friend, maybe others would follow. Unfortunately, I couldn't quite figure out how. At the end of the second week of school, Jack walked in to Mrs. Talbot's classroom. Jack Spratt walked into Mrs. Talbot's third grade classroom on 4 legs and dragging a long chain. Of course, no one else knew what his name was except for me. I raised my hand for the first time and asked Mrs. Talbot if I could take Jack home. Mrs. Talbot was a good teacher. She had seen I was having trouble adjusting to the new school. That day she must have seen the hope and longing in my eyes, because she said yes. The entire class spent the afternoon writing notes to my parents, asking them to give Jack a home. After school, I was so excited, I ran all the way home with a bundle of letters. That night, my parents looked over the letters, looked at me, and then finally said yes. Mrs. Talbot had agreed to foster Jack over the weekend while we spent some time getting his new home ready. The next Monday after school, Jack and I walked home together for the first time. That night, after Mom tucked us into bed, I sat and told Jack how scared I'd been about starting at a new school and not being able to make any new friends, but also how I felt better having at least one friend in him, and all it had taken was for me to speak up. The next day, Mom and Jack walked with me to school. For the first time since I'd started at the new school, I didn't think about my hair or missing tooth or bad breath. Although Jack was no longer welcome in Mrs. Talbot's classroom, I felt better walking through the door knowing that I had at least one friend waiting for me at home. But that morning school was different. I remembered how last week all I had to do was speak up, and suddenly I had a friend in Jack. Everyone wanted to know how Jack was doing, and as I started really talking to my classmates for the first time, I discovered we had a lot in common. One friend had come, and others would follow. This is the true story of how Jack Spratt came into my life in 3rd grade, just when I most needed a friend. I will forever be grateful to my 3rd grade teacher, Mrs. Talbot, and all of my classmates who helped make sure my parents had no choice but to let me bring Jack home. And also to my parents for giving Jack a home. Jack Spratt was a member of our family for 16 years, and the best dog a girl could ask for.